Manitoba. The honourable member from Brantford Brant.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And to say that myself and my colleagues and opposition members in this House have been throwing a curveball would be an understatement. I had originally thought that I would be talking for the third time about the Green Slush Fund and its various amendments to the motion brought before the House, and trying to impress for one last time in calendar year 2024, impress upon my Liberal colleagues why they should finally relent and release the documents unredacted so we can get back to the business that the people here in Canada elected us to do. But to my colleague from Edmonton, St. Albert, we are definitely in uncharted waters. It's historical, it's unprecedented, and I think it deserves the attention from my intervention today. But before I do that, I want to start on a happy note. As I indicated, this is my last official speech intervention in the House for 2024. I want to take the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas, a very prosperous New Year, and all the chair occupants, as well as all of our fine clerks and House staff, to our pages, to my colleagues. I wish them all individually a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I wish them time to reflect and have a relaxing time with their families and their ridings. I offer the same greetings to all my opposition colleagues and to members of the government, as well as to the Liberal caucus. We all play a pivotal role here in the exercise of democracy, but it's important we take a step back and to thank those who assist us in that process. But getting back to the reality of the situation, and I know some of my colleagues have read out various excerpts of the Deputy Prime Minister's official letter of resignation, but I want to take the time to actually read it out, Mr. Speaker, and to reflect upon it for a moment. This is dated today's date. Dear Prime Minister, it has been the honour of my life to serve in government, working for Canada and Canadians. We have accomplished a lot together. On Friday, you told me you no longer want me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in the cabinet. Upon reflection, I have concluded that the only honest and viable path is for me to resign from the cabinet. To be effective, a minister must speak on behalf of the Prime Minister and with his full confidence. In making your decision, you made clear that I no longer credibly enjoy the confidence and possess the authority that comes with it. For the past number of weeks, you and I have found ourselves at odds about the best path forward for Canada. Our country today faces a grave challenge. The incoming administration in the United States is pursuing a policy of aggressive economic nationalism, including a threat of 25% tariffs. We need to take that threat extremely seriously. That means keeping our fiscal powder dry today so we have the reserves we may need for a coming tariff war. That means eschewing costly political gimmicks. Emphasis mine, Mr. Speaker. Political gimmicks, which we can ill afford and which make Canadians doubt that we recognize the gravity of the moment. That means pushing back against America First economic nationalism with a determined effort to fight for capital and investment and the jobs they bring. That means working in good faith and humility with the premiers of the provinces and territories of our great and diverse country, and building a true Team Canada response. I know Canadians would recognize and respect such an approach. They know when we are working for them, and they equally know when we are focused on ourselves. Inevitably, our time in government will come to an end. But how we deal with the threat our country currently faces will define us for a generation, and perhaps longer. Canada will win if we are strong, smart, and united. It is this conviction which has driven my strenuous efforts this fall to manage our spending in ways that will give us the flexibility we will need to meet the serious challenges presented by the United States. I will always be grateful for the chance to have served in government, and I will always be proud of our government's work for Canada and Canadians. I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues as a Liberal Member of Parliament, and I am committed to running again for my seat in the next federal election with gratitude. Signed, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. What the letter does, it simply validates the rumors that have been circulating for weeks, if not months, that the Prime Minister was at odds with his Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance in terms of the governance of this particular country, how we're going to achieve that by way of economic policies. It confirms all along what we have always believed in this particular Prime Minister, that his credentials, his self-proclaimed credentials of being a proud feminist, was always fake, Mr. Prime Minister. It's all about gimmicks. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. I elevated you there for a moment. It's all about gimmicks. It's all about virtue signaling. I've lost track of how many strong, effective women who have been elected as Liberal members of Parliament, who have gone on to be appointed to very senior roles in government. Jody Wilson-Raybould, to take one example. I was proud of the fact that at the time of her election and appointment as Canada's first female Indigenous Justice Minister, Attorney General, I was in the ranks at that point, provincially, as a Crown Attorney. And I know she did her best. She put her heart into that job, and she stood by principles that have governed lawyers upon their call to a particular bar, of integrity, of knowledge, of confidence. And the ordeal of the SNC-Lavalin affair, Mr. Speaker, highlighted the integrity and the confidence that she maintained in that particular role, because she wasn't going to be bullied, and that's the term that's appropriate for the actions of the Prime Minister, bullied, threatened, and intimidated to make a decision that compromised her role as the Attorney General, but compromised her sense of right and wrong, her integrity, her ethics. And her refusal to carry the water for the Prime Minister to ensure a sweetheart deal for a Quebec-based company under the proviso of terms that turned out to be completely false, as advanced by the Prime Minister and this government. She said no. She spoke, her words, truth to power. And she'll forever be remembered for the courage that she displayed. But that courage, which should be lauded and should be encouraged and should be supported by a true leader of a G7 country, was dismissed so summarily by this fake feminist. He has let down women across this country, time after time after time. He turned an event a couple of weeks ago into a partisan event at Equal Voice here in Ottawa, used it as an opportunity to again criticize the same country he is trying to work with, trying to avoid a 25% tariff. He takes this as an opportunity to lament the fact that Americans now twice did not elect a female president. That's not how you negotiate. And it's no small wonder that in, I think it was today's paper or yesterday's paper, Toronto Sun, Brian Lilly, headline, premiers are stepping up to do the job Trudeau won't. They're taking active steps to deal with the border issues.
He knows. He knows.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Leader of the Parliamentary Secretary, the Leader of the Government, is rising on a point of order.
The member, I think, through self-awareness, is aware that he wasn't supposed to use the personal names.
Yeah. And I do thank the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. It's something which it passed by me, but even if it is contained in an article, it's important for members to make reference to the title or to the riding that the person holds and not to their last name.
Fair enough, Speaker. But the article goes on to show, apart from the Prime Minister and various ministers talking about a Team Canada approach, what have they actually accomplished? What measures have they stipulated to this House and to Canadians? What steps are they going to take to address the concerns raised by President-elect Trump about the dangers of our porous borders? Apart from making that announcement, he's done nothing. It's reflective of this government. Make an announcement, don't follow through. Time after time after time. So the article goes on to describe what Ontario is doing. It goes on to describe what...
ask the Honourable Member just to be careful with his microphone, paper against mic.
It goes on to describe what Alberta Premier Daniel Smith is doing. It goes on to describe Manitoba Premier Webb Canoe, Quebec's Premier Francois Legault, taking all immediate effective steps in the hopes that they show leadership that this Prime Minister is most assuredly lacking. But to the point about his fake feminist credentials, this is not just any old Minister of Finance. We know that he's lost 2 Ministers of Finance since 2015. This Minister of Finance, Freeland, this Minister of Finance, the member for, yes, thank you, colleagues, was the Deputy Prime Minister. She carried an extremely important portfolio, clout. She was his biggest cheerleader. She withstood numerous complaints and concerns. She was forever loyal to this fake feminist Prime Minister. And what did she get in return? She was left dangling in the wind, Mr. Speaker, literally all of last week when the rumors were circulating that she wanted to deliver the fall economic statement in a direction that was not approved by the Prime Minister. Political staffers started to leak stories to the press. And notwithstanding, it's understandable why opposition members would use that as an opportunity to just clearly demonstrate how he has lost not only the confidence of Canadians, the Prime Minister, he has lost confidence in his own cabinet. And the Deputy Prime Minister listened. She was not supported at all by the Prime Minister, said nothing to highlight her credentials or to telegraph his support for her. The writing literally was on the wall, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, I think it was only one other female minister last week who actually came to her aid and demonstrated her credentials and what she has done for this particular country. And while I may disagree, and I will disagree till I'm blue in the face, about the direction, the failed direction she has taken this country. And I think it's not just Conservative members who would agree with that statement, it's Canadians. Canadians have, for years, have lost complete faith and trust in the institution. Our federal institution, they've lost faith and trust in this Prime Minister. They had no faith and trust with this Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. You take a look at what's happening in this country, Mr. Speaker. He's made a mess. He's broken everything. He is weak on immigration. He is weak on our borders. He is weak on economic policy. He is weak with respect to criminal justice reforms. He tries to champion this manna from heaven, this GST holiday on goods that might make a small, minute difference in some of the lives of some Canadians. But on a grander scale, is that the best that this government can do? And on the weekend, I was actually really shocked. I'm just trying to get the name of this minister correctly. The Minister of Families, Children and Social Development introduced a series of infomercials on her social media while millions of Canadians are struggling, not to buy Christmas presents, struggling to put meals on the table, to feed their children, to keep a roof over their head, to put clothing on their children's backs, to pay their taxes, to pay their utilities. We have a Liberal cabinet minister smiling away at various aisles in the department store and highlighting, look at this, no GST on car seats.
Teddy bear.
No GSTs on a teddy bear. And then she pulls out a bottle of wine. No GST on this.
Burp.
Tell that to the 2 million Canadians who are not going to be enjoying a glass of wine. They'll be lucky if they get tap water, maybe some orange juice. They're not going to be enjoying what this Liberal cabinet minister wants to demonstrate is going to make a meaningful difference in the lives of Canadians. So in a roundabout way, I can go back to Green Slush Fund. I can talk about the substantial millions and millions of dollars of waste. It's projected at least $400 million, if not higher. You take a look at all of the scandals that this government has been involved in since 2015, and I bet you could actually surmise that we're talking that over $1 billion of mismanagement, fraudulent disbursement of taxpayer funds have been the hallmark of this Prime Minister and this government and this failed Liberal Party of Canada. This is real taxpayer dollars that could have made such a substantial difference in the lives of Canadians. Healthcare alone, we're paying more to service our debt than we transfer to provinces and territories for health care. Take a look at where that $400 million just in the Green Slush Fund alone could have gone. The RCMP has opined that could have made a substantial difference to frontline officers. The CBSA, our porous borders, the agents who are struggling to inspect all those containers coming in. As the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada stated last week and confirmed by CBSA, 1% of those containers are inspected. That's where taxpayer dollars could be better spent. That's how a conservative, a common sense conservative government will listen and deliver for the people of this country once and for all, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank the honourable member. Questions et commentaires, questions and comments. The honourable member for Waterloo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it might be the last time before the holidays that I'm on my feet, so I really want to wish everyone celebrating in the riding of Waterloo and across Canada and around the world Merry Christmas, best of the holiday season, and I look forward to seeing them in the new year. The member spoke on a lot of different issues, which really do demonstrate some of the concerns and comments I've been hearing from constituents within the riding of Waterloo. It demonstrates that in this place we actually have a lot of work to do and we could have healthy debate. We are actually debating right now a sub-amendment on a question of privilege put forward by the Conservatives. The Conservatives have moved multiple sub-amendments because it's part of the tactics that they are using. They show disdain for this place, and over the weekend it was interesting to communicate with some of my constituents, and the very few who do watch this chamber were quite flabbergasted by the Conservative approach, especially when it comes to women ministers. And I had two constituents mention to me that they remember the days of Jody Wilson-Raybould being in minister roles and how they used to speak to her and of her, including, tweeting about wanting to see her gone. And now that she is no longer in this chamber, they carry her on this pedestal as they are now with the former Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. So I would ask the member a question. I would ask him, could he please share with this House what the sub-amendment is that we're currently debating in this chamber? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Brantford-Brant, but before I go on, I just want to let members know I try to give members each about a minute to ask a question and have a minute for response. The honourable member for Brantford-Brant.
I'm actually appalled that the member opposite would spend about a minute and a half to talk about just dribble that actually has no application to what Canadians are talking about. We brought this particular motion and several sub-amendments to finally deliver a message to this government that they need to be accountable for their actions, they need to demonstrate integrity, and stop playing these political games when it comes to your order, Mr. Speaker, to deliver those documents, all of those documents, unredacted. It's about confidence. And that member, her government, and her Liberal caucus continually, by blocking the release of those documents, demonstrate the lack of confidence that they have in Canadians.
Point of order, the honourable member for Waterloo.
Let the record show the Conservative member does not know what the sub-amendment is. Thank you, Mr.
That's more debate. The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And frankly, it actually pains me to see what is supposed to be in a functioning democracy, a government in complete and utter collapse today. And Mr. Speaker, it's no secret that many in this House have lost confidence in the government. In fact, Canadians have lost confidence in this government. The only ones that seem to have not lost confidence in this government is their NDP coalition partners, and the leader of the NDP holding off in order to get his pension is probably one of the most contemptible things that I have seen in this country in a long, long time. Mr. Speaker, I want the honourable member's comments on the fact that we need an election now. We need to return to some sense of normalcy, some sense of decency, and some sense of morality in this country that a common sense Conservative government can do. The
honourable member for Brantford-Brant.
If I didn't make this emphasis known in my intervention, Mr. Speaker. I certainly want to emphasize it in my response to my colleague's question. This is the final nail in the proverbial coffin of the leadership of this Prime Minister and this government. They have lost all moral and legal authority to govern. And my colleague is absolutely correct. This is what I'm hearing day in, day out from constituents in my riding, as well as constituents across this country who follow me on social media. They are not concerned as to whether or not the leader of our party is getting a security clearance. They want an election now.
Right.
That's what everyone is talking about. It is time to restore the promise that this country once offered, that this Prime Minister and his government has destroyed. And the leader of the NDP party needs to show a backbone and put the Canadian interests first, as well as his caucus, put the needs of Canadians first, not for his own selfish reasons.
Questions et commentaires. The honourable member, the honourable parliamentary secretary to the leader of the government in the House.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. What has not changed is the Conservative Party of Canada attitude towards what the member just finished saying. They have consistently been character assassination of the government members and calling for an election. Consistently, for over 2 years now. It is a joke to try for the member to try to give the impression the time is now, when in fact he's been saying the time is now for the last 2 years, Mr. Speaker. We are not moving forward on a number of initiatives because the Conservative Party, in their self-interest, continues to filibuster on a motion that the member, I don't even think, knows what it's supposed to be debated right now. The motion is to defer the issue for the last 6 weeks to the Standing Committee on Proc. That is the issue. That is what the debate is about. Can the member provide his thoughts on why it is the Conservatives continue to play this multi-million-dollar game?
The honourable member for Brantford Brant.
What an absolute insulting remark by that member of the Liberal Party. Insulting to Canadians. In 2021, Canadians gave them a minority government. They did not give them the plurality of the votes. Yes, we would have been into a different mandate by now if they didn't have this unholy allegiance to the NDP. Are they on? Are they off? Are they dance partners? Are they waiting in the wings? That's what Canadians did not vote for. That's what this member needs to be reminded about day in and day out. And yes, I will continue to argue that we need an election now, every single day that I proudly represent the citizens of Brantford Brant.
The honourable member for Toronto St. Paul's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to say happy holidays first to the people of Toronto St. Paul's, and also give a shout out to my father who got out of the hospital this weekend, and wish him a speedy recovery. I've been in this place for 3 months today, Mr. Speaker, but that doesn't mean I'm 3 months old. I've been watching this government heading towards a crash like this for the better part of a year. And it's surprising that it took this long to happen. And if I look at the Minister of Finance's letter, and she says, we must keep our fiscal powder dry. That is to accommodate for an unknown shock that may or may not have come in future. And this gives some flexibility to the government to react. So my question for the member is, the SDTC slush fund, which used up lots of taxpayer dollars, is that endemic of a government that was headed for a crash anyways, and the finance minister is only now admitting to that?
The honourable member for Brantford Brant.
I thank my colleague for that excellent question. And as I articulated in my intervention, this government has demonstrated the complete opposite of what they promised Canadians. The Prime Minister wrote an open letter to Canadians shortly after his election in 2015, promised to be a good economic steward of the taxpayer funds, promised Canadians they would be open by default, transparent, accountable. Take a look at what has happened since 2015. It would take me probably another 2 minutes to outline all the numerous scandals, Mr. Speaker, the amount of government waste, the amount of misspent, misused, misappropriated, defrauded taxpayer funds, which I estimate to be well north of $1 billion. That is not exercising the public good, and it's not appropriate, and that is why we need a carbon tax election now.
If the honourable member can get a question in 10 seconds, I'd be happy to give the floor to him. The honourable member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, can the member comment on the fact that Canadians are being held hostage by an erratic Prime Minister and the leader of the NDP that is putting his $2.3 million pension ahead of country?
The member from Brantford Brant has a very brief response.
I can't disagree with that. It's selfish economic interests, personal interests over the needs of Canadians.